Welcome to Ocean Chicks Films.
Welcome to the Ocean Chicks Horror Podcast. I'm your host, Karen, and tonight in the broadcast studio we have actor and filmmaker Bret Lada. Bret is best known for his found footage psychological thriller, The Andy Baker Tape, and I got to talk to him about it. So sit back and enjoy the show, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
What's up, guys? Just want you to know that last week I got the call and I just got optioned by the Food Network. Let's get away from our usual taste and tell format and dive a little deeper into my family history. Why not use Ancestry and me to try to locate any relatives? So I spit in a cup, I sent it in, I waited 3 weeks, and boom, I'm paired with a common ancestor. This story's crazy. Do I have an exciting day planned for us? Hey! Oh!
Hey Jeff, it's Andy.
You know, actually, none of the guys on my channel know who you are yet. It's with absolute pleasure that I get to introduce you to my new half-brother.
Welcome to the Ocean Chicks Horror Podcast. I'm your host, Karen, and today I'm super excited to have on the show actor and filmmaker Bret Lada. Hey, Bret, how's it going?
How's it going, Karen?
So thanks for doing this.
Of course, I'm so glad you asked me to come on.
Yeah, it's cool. So last week, this friend of mine said, hey, you got to watch this found footage film. And I went, okay, and no expectations, nothing whatsoever. And I started watching and I was like, this is good. Wow, so good. And then by the time I got to the end, I was like, wow, that was super plot twisty. Very cool. And then I thought to myself, oh, I got to hunt these people down and ask more questions.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, and really cool that you're down to earth enough that you do stuff like this too.
Oh yeah, it's great. You know, we made this just this was a quarantine project for us, and we didn't really make this for, we did it for under $2,000 at the time, and we needed something to latch onto, some kind of project. So the fact that it has the legs that it does, we're kind of thrilled about, and it was totally unexpected. And I spent most of 2021 touring this project around the country. I got to meet so many great people, and it's still exciting me that people are still discovering this film in a way that resonates with them.
Right. Yeah. Really incredible. I'm surprised. $2,000 budget. Wow. Good job.
Yeah. Well, that was with us pulling some shortcuts. Basically, I got a grant right through Screen Actors Guild right before, which I put towards the camera. I mostly worked as an actor in the past. And I spent the first 3 months of the pandemic really learning how to shoot. I never shot my own stuff. And then I did a little bit of editing myself here and there, but I really, this was all self-contained. Dustin and I, who plays Andy Baker, we shot everything ourselves. Yeah. We didn't have the budget for a sound team, so we used our own, a little shotgun mic on top of the camera. I learned how to color grade to get this done. I edited it. I directed it. And it was during the pandemic. So if we needed locations, we were getting hotels for $30, $40 a night, which kind of made it very budget friendly for us. I mean, a lot of it was shot in our backyard. I shot a lot of it in a house that I was renting at the Jersey Shore at the time. And it was guerrilla filmmaking 101.
Wow. That's so inspiring. That's really inspiring, because I have a lot of friends that are, doing things like that. And that's so cool. So hard work pays off.
Yeah, it was. And I will say that it was hard work. And we did make, it was an absolute learning curve as we were shooting this project. We thought we were going to be able to get it done in about 5 or 6 days. And we were grossly miscalculated. It took about 2.5 weeks to get all the principal photography. And that was with, I'd say, 14 to 16 hour days. And a lot of it was because we were still learning how to shoot properly. And most found footage is shot on a camcorder or a camera that has blanket sensors and blanket exposures. And I was shooting on a cinema camera. Didn't realize how much more difficult that was going to make this project, because things would go out of focus or the exposure would change and we couldn't get it right. So we'd watch, and we don't have someone spotting the camera as we're shooting it. So we would do a 5-minute take, watch the footage, and we'd be like, Dustin's out of focus. Brett's out of focus. The exposure's bad. So we really had to go back and figure it out. I think there were about 5 or 6 scenes that we shot. We thought we had it, and then we realized that the footage was shaky or blurred or out of focus. We went back and we reshot all of that. So it was a learning curve. We figured it out the hard way, but I'm glad that I had a great team around me that was just like, we're going to get this done. Let's get this in.
Right. Dustin's your friend, obviously.
Dustin was is my best friend from college, and at the time. Cool. He was working as a blue man in Boston, and I was working as an actor out of New York. Yeah, and we were both, it was the top of the pandemic, and we were both laid off from work. And we had really nothing else to go on. I think during the pandemic, I had maybe 4 or 5 auditions. So it was like, what can we do to stay busy, to keep ourselves active?
Yeah.
Dustin and I started producing a few short films.
Right.
One was terrible. It was so bad. The next one got a little bit better. And then we decided that, if we were going to do this mockumentary road trip, we were going to drive out to Big Sur and Mount Rushmore and shoot this kind of heart of darkness American story. Right. And we realized around that time, every single person was living that. So no one wanted to actually see that because it was such a strange time. So we dialed in our concept. We realized if we were going to do this right, we would have to do it local and to places that we knew. And that's how the story of the food blogger came out. That's how we utilized New Jersey. We're both New Jersey natives, born and raised at the Jersey Shore. So a lot of the places were some of our childhood hotspots, and it fell into place the way it was going to fall into place.
Speaking of that, the scenery, amazing, gorgeous, and such a contradiction to the whole story. Like, when I saw it, usually found footage is like super shaky, really dark, really, but it was so bright and so beautiful looking, that such a contrast to this really creepy.
Yeah. Well, that was actually really much of a look that we were going for. And when the film starts out, it is bright and sunny and it's sunshine and things are great. And that was definitely the aesthetic that we're going for. And even the way I color graded it, it started off very bright and vibrant. As it goes on and on and on, it becomes more monochrome, more desaturated, and kind of, in a subtle way, but to the point just to emphasize. And all of the horror elements of this film take place at nighttime. Right. However, when we wrote this, we never really set out to make this a horror film. This is truly a relationship story, and it was really about the relationship of these two guys and how they come together and how they get pulled apart. But we wanted to bring in as much scenic metaphors as possible. It's like when we first see Jeff is living in this beautiful, nice house with this big, this big view of the ocean backyard. And when we see Andy, he's living in a broken house. And that's the first time that we see Andy. There's a dilapidated house that's falling apart, and there's an old car that's all beat up. And those are all things that we wanted to incorporate, to even that are nonchalant and kind of go under the radar, but it's still kind of symbolic of when we meet these two characters. And it's how those guys, town mouse and country mouse, come together under the circumstances of this twisted story.
Yeah. Interesting too, because to me, they're both, they're kind of both awful, narcissistic kind of people, but from two very different backgrounds coming together. So in my mind, and I do this with people all the time too, I don't like to judge and say, I hate that. I don't like that person. That's the end of that. I always like to see where someone's coming from. So for me, it just like exploded in my mind, about these two characters. Like, do I like either of them? Yeah. But then I felt sympathetic towards them both too. So
yeah. And that's where I, as a filmmaker, we certainly made some conscious choices with that. And for some people that really resonated, and for some people it didn't. Okay. Jeff certainly starts off, my character, as being more unlikable. He is the embodiment of this millennial influencer who really only cares about his upward rise to fame and getting somewhere. And when we first meet Andy is a little bit of he's an odd duck, but Dustin brings such a gentle simplicity to that character that you really identify with him and you really feel for him. And I think that that's a testament to his acting. And I think that these guys kind of go on an X together, where Jeff starts here, Andy starts there. They meet in the middle at the crossover, and then they go to their other ways. And that was certainly what we wrote into the story. We wanted you to eventually realize that while they're both damaged people, there's not really a good or bad guy in this story. And there's also, they are two halves of the same coin. I mean, they're the same person flipped on, flipped to the opposite side. And they both have good qualities, they both have bad qualities, and they both have the potential for danger. So we wanted people to, our intentions were to have our audience not really knowing who was going to be the bad guy and who was going to be the good guy throughout. And I think it's still kind of a fine line with the way that we ended, because you could argue that both the guys are justified in exactly what they did. And that's one of the questions that we posed. I don't think that we have to answer that question. We can leave that up to our audience, but that was certainly an intention that we did in writing the film.
So was this whole project very planned out, or did a lot of things kind of happen as you went along by accident?
There were a lot of happy accidents, but this was heavily scripted. So we wrote the script over 3 months, and most of the dialogue, I'd say 85 to 90% of the dialogue is scripted to a T. I think Dustin and I went through 5 drafts of the script. We tandem wrote everything. And the scenes that are improv, for the most part, are the food blogger scenes, because we didn't know what we were going to be faced with. However, we knew the effect that we wanted to have on the audience afterwards. We knew that these guys were either coming together and we want people rooting for them, being like, okay, this can work between these guys, or there's something that happens that pulls them apart. Some of the locations were absolute happy accidents. We stumbled across some things. Like when I said that we stumbled across that broken down house, originally we found that on the side of a road, and we shot that scene the day before somewhere else. And then I drove past this broken house and I was like, Dustin, this is the perfect location for this. This is better. And I also wanted to reshoot because the first day we shot it, it was bright sunshine. So the entire time we're kind of like squinting, and it was kind of overcast that day, which creates a natural diffusion. So it's easier for us to see and act with each other. So little things like that were accidents. And I found that if you are open to letting yourself not be conventionally bound by, we have to do it like this, the textbook way, you're going to stumble onto some great things. Now, we wouldn't be, since it was shot found footage, we had that liberty. I've worked in narrative features a lot, and you really don't have the liberty once you have a production up and running. But because it was COVID, because the world was shut down, we had a little bit more alacrity with where we could shoot and how we were going to shoot it. And we didn't really have a budget time frame that we were like, well, we have to hit our days and we have to do this. We were able to be a little bit more guerrilla style in how we attack the project.
Yeah, that's very cool. Speaking of the food element, so when my YouTube channel first started, I did vegan cooking videos. So I could really connect with the food. You ate some really awesome food along the way. And were you like going to local restaurants and things?
They are. A lot of them,
That's cool.
We had a whole bucket list of places in New Jersey that we wanted to go to.
Yeah.
Some of them we just couldn't do because, for instance, they'd have outdoor music playing and we couldn't get the copyrights for some of the songs and things like that.
Yeah.
We wanted to give kind of a little nod to some of our favorite places. I went to, one of the bagel places we used. I was going throughout the entire pandemic. We went to this great turkey farm that I loved. We went to this amazing lobster roll seafood market that I'm a big fan of. And then Dustin loved the barbecue spot that we hit. That was one of his childhood spots.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, there was a list of about 10 or 15 spots. Some we just weren't able to squeeze them in, which I would have loved to done as much. But at the end of the day, it's really not about the food. That's just the vehicle that we could have these two guys connect over. It's about the story between the two men. So, but that was, we studied a lot of the YouTube food bloggers as we were before we went to pre-production. I watched Mark Wiens a lot, who I really liked. And I watched a lot of these guys, and we watched the way that they cut and they spliced all the footage together and the way that they were kind of interactive. And, we just took our best stab at recreating that.
Excellent job. And I know that was tough because YouTube is a whole different ball game from doing movies. It's a different, like a lot of people will give you advice and things like that. And it's like, but that's not how YouTubers film things. That's not what
Yeah.
it's like. You nailed it.
Well, thank you so much.
And it wasn't like usually people do in movies, they'll do YouTube, but it's almost like a spoof, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like,
Well,
oh
that's
God,
something that I was really, even in the directorial styles and in the writing styles, I was really focused on making us as earnest as possible. And that's
right.
what I don't like when I see a lot of people play these YouTube influencers, or at least my sensibilities, where you do feel like there's a gloss to it, and you feel like they're kind of putting on an extra shine, and it's kind of a, an elbow at that.
Right.
And I wanted everything to be as believable as possible. And even in the writing of this script, we went back, and for the most part, we had the initial concept written out in script one, but it was really just about dialing in the dialogue and taking away any extraneous words. And that's the one thing in found footage that I was striving for, is to not make it feel scripted, to make it feel like that these guys were discovering everything in the moment as it's going. I wanted the awkward pauses. I wanted the strange kind of receiving the information, and I didn't want it to be overly scripted and like we're leading people down a certain road. And those are the films, if I think about some of my favorite films, those are the ways that those screenwriters handle that. I, in no way would I say I'm a master screenwriter, but I am a cinephile, and I watch everything that I can. And I would like to think I have some taste on what I think really works well, and what I think, what I get taken out of films for.
Right. Yeah. And found footage, what a thing to tackle as well. Like,
yeah, it's deceivingly difficult,
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
And, I think in some ways found footage gets a little kind of poo-poo from the film community, because, they're not viewing it as a traditional narrative, and you don't have to have Roger Deakins shooting this incredible cinematography. Right. However, like you talked about earlier, there's all the tropes of found footage of shaky cams and jump scares in the dark. Yeah. And we've seen that. So we were trying to find ways to break the mold in that. And we did carefully plan out a lot of these shots, and we wanted to make them almost tableauic in a way. And we were trying to find, how can we make it feel organic, that there's an actual camera that's watching everything, right, and it's not staged. And one of the things that I found creative about this is that there's a lot of single take shots in the film. Okay. And a lot of the single take shots that we do, it's all inspired by Birdman in 1917, but we have multiple takes that are spliced together. And I think we did a pretty good job of hiding a lot of those cuts. That served a few purposes, because, we have a few takes that go on for about 10 or 11 minutes. Yeah. If we can find a cut that we can hide, number one, it lets us, in case there is a flub in a line, or there's a flub in the acting, or there's a moment that we want to dial in, we can find the cut, go back to the part that we didn't like, reshoot that right back up to the cut, and then splice it all together, so we can really kind of shape the performances. Right. And that was something that I found really exciting, was how many cuts can we find and hide and splice together, so we create the illusion that this was a long single take. And I think that, that's most apparent in the scene where Jeff and Andy are at the hotel, and, I don't want to give anything away, but Jeff runs out in the parking lot with his, in his underwear. Yeah. And also at the end of the film, our grand climax, that's about an 11-minute shot. And I think that there's about 6 or 7 cuts in there, as they're running out. I won't give away the ending. Right. But up until the end. And we shot that over the course of, I think, 2 nights and 18 hours. That was a really tough shoot. Yeah. Wow. So good though. So good. Okay. Now also the question I have too is, this was just over an hour long. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. But really effective. It's 69 minutes and 25 seconds, actually. Wow. Yeah. Why? It's a good question. There are a few reasons, but especially in this day and age, and especially with found footage, and you're not doing a traditional narrative, I think people's attention spans are just not where they used to be. And
Yeah.
if you look at the classic films of like the 1940s, like the David Lean films, the epics, Dr. Zhivago and
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia, I am sad to say this, but I think the days of making these grand epics are over. I don't think that people can sit in a dark room untethered to their phones and do that. So I think less is more in some ways. And for me and Dustin, when we were shaping the editing of this, it was really just about cutting out the fluff. And we just wanted to get to the crux of the story. And especially with found footage, that was, with a two-hander, the way that, with the limitations of our cast, there's really only one or two directions that this story could go in. And, our story goes in one direction. And I think it's, we just wanted to cut out the fluff, get the story points that are needed, get us to those moments, and make that impactful. And if we're in and out, and I mean, I think the goal was at first just to hit 75 minutes. And then I was like, why? Like there's some extra fluff here and there. It drags the story down. And I wanted the story just to be succinct, simple, and accessible to everyone. So it wasn't a conscious effort to be like, well, we're going to make this as short as we can.
Right.
But it was an effort to keep the tightrope and to keep the engagement of this story as taut as possible.
Right. Effective completely. I hate movies that drag on and have that excess on there. It makes me nuts because it's like, this is so long. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Cut this part, cut those things out. You don't need that.
I was just even watching some of the Oscar films, and I'm a big fan of. I mean, a lot of stuff in there is genius. It's great. Some of my favorites, it feels like there could have been 20 minutes plucked out of it. And it's hard because as a writer and as a storyteller, you really have a tough time because the messages that you want to convey.
Yeah.
And you also know that you have to kind of lay the pipe out so people can follow A, B, C, and D. And I edited the whole thing myself. I'm curious to see, though, if we had a different editor. I'm happy with I was able to deliver the product that I was striving for. But if someone else with an outside perspective edited the film, right, I'm sure we'd have a night and day different cut and different take of the story, and that's part of it. So at the end of the day, there's no right, there's no wrong. It's doing the best you can to serve the story, which was my approach into editing the film.
Wow, you're a breath of fresh air from the people I've talked to, because you're doing some really innovative kind of things. I hope that you're going to be doing more, not necessarily found footage, but
no, I'm in the midst of, I've been stuck on a scene now for 3 days, but I'm in the midst of a screenplay that I'm pretty excited about. And
okay,
it's not found footage at all. It's a true narrative. And I've had this concept for about a year. I've been mulling it over. I have put it on hiatus for a year, and then I went through some stuff, and I was like, I just need to write this stuff down. Right. So I started attacking it earlier, and I'm very happy with it so far. And like I said, I am not trained as a screenwriter. I trained as an actor for years, and I worked in New York theater. I worked in TV and film, and I still, do a lot. But it's intimidating at times to write down because I see my friends who are successful writers, and the amount of work that they put into honing that craft is the amount of time that I put into honing, being an actor. However, I would say that it's all under the same umbrella. You're all part of storytelling. And at the end of the day, acting is just a part of telling a story, the same as the script is part of telling a story.
Right.
And I think you just kind of have to leap into things. And that's what I did with Andy Baker. And that's what I'm going to do with this. And, I think that what was easy about Andy, I shouldn't say easy, but what made that a little bit accessible is that was my first go around. And we didn't have any expectations for it. We didn't know what was going to happen. I remember when we finished our first cut, we were like, well, if we play at a single film festival, that's just what we want. That'll be great. We ended up playing, I think it was like 30 or 40, and we won a lot. We had a very nice, successful run, completely unexpected.
Yeah.
So I'm in a little bit of sophomore syndrome where it's like, well, I want my next thing to be so much better, and I want it to be this, I want it to be this. And I think that that's the wrong mindset to have.
Yeah.
You kind of just have to throw yourself into it, get back into the joy of being a 5-year-old, writing a crazy story, and then figuring out how to translate that to an audience. So I think that, it's easy to put a lot of pressure on yourself, and the less that you can put pressure on and find something that's fun for you, you will excite people that are watching it or reading it. So that's what I'm trying to do now.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to have fun with it. Absolutely. Yeah, life's too short to be too serious and competitive that way. Now, I want to bring up, lastly, some of the stuff that you've been in, because you've been in some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
So, Law and Order SVU, cool, man. Alpha House with John Goodman, come on.
Yeah, I did 2 seasons with John. That was fun. That was one of my first big jobs, and to work opposite John Goodman was such a learning curve.
Yeah, very cool. And I also saw that you went on Kelly Ripa's show too.
So Mark Consuelos
was in that show.
His husband is a series regular on Alpha House. And in the first episode that I get beat up by John Goodman. He throws me on the ground and starts slamming me with a chair. And he's a big senator. It's about 4 Republican senators that live in a house in D.C. and it's based on a true idea. So it gets blown up because it would be like if Ted Cruz took a sledgehammer and beat up someone on the side of the road. So they bring us back onto Kelly and Michael to have this big talk out hug episode. And we shot Andrew McCarthy, actually, from the Brat Pack, directed that episode. We had 2 takes to do that, and that was on Regis. It was on Michael. No, not Regis. Am I saying? It was on Michael and Kelly. Yeah. The first take. I was so nervous because we shot that during a live recording. It was a commercial break, and they were actually shooting. Like, that was the real audience that was there to see Michael and Kelly. And then we had 2 takes to do it. The first one was a little bit rushed, and then we reset. Yeah. Did one more again, went into it, this big hug out scene with John Goodman on the show. But that was, I think I was 24, 25 when I did.
How exciting.
24. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all of these things have led to where you are now. So that's a
good
thing.
It does. And that's one thing that I've learned from, I had an acting teacher in college that just described everything as mud on the wall. And it's true, and it's like in this business, some of the lessons and the things that you pick up from aren't necessarily apparent at the time. And sometimes it's 10 or 15 years down the road where you're like, oh, that's what it meant. So it's all mud on the wall. I have certainly grown. My taste has changed. My sensibilities have changed from when I started out. But when I can get back to the playful innocence I had when I was first starting off in theater, TV, creating, that's the goal, because it's so easy to be like, well, I did this, I can do this right now. And there is no right or wrong. It's getting back to being a kid and playing and finding the excitement and the fun in things. And, I have craft now that I can back it up with, which I didn't have 15 years ago.
Right.
But sometimes it's just the blind naivety of being like, I'm going to go do this. And that's what opens the door for you.
Yeah. Well, you're keen and you're a go-getter. And that says a lot because you went through the lockdown and did stuff. You kept going. And even now you're not talking about it like, oh, it's pretty slim. There's not much happening. So that's very cool. And I think that's very inspiring for people to hear too, because a lot of people have got very negative, the last little while. So even I'm kind of inspired by it.
It doesn't mean, I'm going through a little bit of, I shot 2 films last year that both horrors actually that I was really excited with.
Right.
One is called Bad Connection, which is going to be premiering actually at the Phoenix Sci-Fi Horror Film Festival soon. I had a blast at it. It was all shot around downtown LA. We had a great time. Okay. And then I can't talk about, but I shot a great one that will be coming out It was produced by Mar Vista. I think it's going to be a Tubi original soon. It's
Okay.
called Murder at the Murder Mystery Party, which they just announced. And that I am really excited about. I had a blast shooting that.
Okay.
But besides that, it has been kind of a drought. It's been a slow, strange time.
Right.
I am not innocent of going through the darkness of being like, what's going on? I'm never going to work again.
Right.
However, I know that if that's the mindset that I lead with, and if that's what I approach people with,
Yep.
Nobody wants to be around someone that's like, well, the world's coming to an end, blah, blah, blah. And it is an emotional skill to pull yourself out of those feelings. And it is not easy. As an artist, we're always afraid that our last job is going to be our last job ever. We're not going to work again.
Right.
And you have to just reconnect, like I said, to that childhood naivety of like, no, the world is still, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and the world's going to keep spinning. So I can either move with it or I can sit in the same spot and say, woe is me. So I'm trying my best to show up for myself, which is all you can do.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said. I think you've answered everything. I hardly even asked any questions. You're awesome.
This is great. It's so refreshing. I haven't talked about Andy in about a year now, so it was great to come on.
Yeah, well, I have some friends that haven't seen it yet, so I'll be promoting for sure. Is there anything else that you want to promote right now? I know you've got those few.
No, like I said, I have the 2 films that I talked about, but please, Andy Baker, we're available to stream. We're on Tubi, we're on Roku, we're on Vudu, Apple TV, Amazon, Google Play, a lot. If you just Googled, on my website or for the Andy Baker tape, it's all out there. So I invite anybody who's watching this, if you are inspired, watch the film. If you want to reach out, my Instagram is Bret Meets World. Feel free to send me a chat. Would love to talk to anybody. And want to thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. And I really did. I loved that film. I really loved it. I'm going to watch it again now, too.
Good. Enjoy it. All right. Hopefully you catch some more stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Well, really nice meeting you, Bret. And you're welcome back anytime.
Great. Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I sure did. Bret's really cool. And I highly recommend his film, The Andy Baker Tape. Go watch it. And drop your comments below because I love to chat. I'll also have all of his socials linked in the description box below so that you can connect with him and then see what he's working on next. And if you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up because it helps me a lot, and subscribe to the channel for more cool content like this. We've got lots more stuff coming. I'm super excited. More interviews, more on-location filming sites, movie reviews, and of course our weekly watch parties that we've been doing that are so much fun. Come on a Saturday night sometime if you have some time and hang out. It's really, really fun. Lots of cool people there. And if you want to support the channel even more, consider joining the Ocean Chicks Films Patreon. You can become an exclusive Ocean Chicks crew member, and that opens you up to being a part of our private watch parties on there. We have those once a month, as well as extra posts, polls, contests. You can vote on all kinds of things. Lots of fun stuff, because we would love to have you there also. And I have that linked down below too, if you want to check it out. So thanks guys so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I just want you to know I love you all. I look forward to chatting with you, and we will see you again on the next one. Bye guys.